$80 to $110. Now the final camera that I've pulled from my cabinet to show you is one that I made. Cameras aren't too hard to make. There's really not too much behind them. I took 2 cigar boxes and I pieced them together. I disassembled them and pieced them together to fit a size that I wanted. I wanted it to be shot on 4x5 film. So I have my 4x5 film holder, and for those of you that don't know what 4x5 film is, it's 4 inches by 5 inches. That's the size of your negative. And it just slides in here. I put a black cloth over it when I'm shooting, so no light leaks in. And then what makes it a pinhole is there's literally just a pinhole for my lens. And I usually count to 15 or 20 very slowly while I'm taking my shot, and I have this mounted to a tripod. It needs to be very steady, and it creates a pretty decent exposure. It needs to be a nice bright day, but I've gotten some pretty good pictures out of this camera. So that's some of the highlights out of my camera collection. And
is this, Erika, is this all of the collection that we can see right here?
No, I have more cameras. These are my favorites. These are either some of the oldest cameras and some of the most used cameras of my collection. Some of the only ones I haven't used is the first one I showed you, and then the film camera that I have that shoots movies. It's just very expensive and very hard to find a place to get it processed, and so I choose not to use it.
Well, thanks. This is terrific. And now we're going to take a look at your own photographs in a minute.
Yes, and let me show you one more camera. The camera I shoot with when I'm shooting my personal work. And this is my Hasselblad. It takes 120 film. So my negatives are 2 inches by 2 inches in size. And they made this model right here for over 60 years. And they just recently stopped making this model and went digital. I just shoot with an 80mm lens, which on a 120 medium format camera equals about a 50mm. And it's what I use when I'm shooting all my personal work.
Great. We'll look at that right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So these are a pair of photographs that I would like to talk about and share with you of some of my personal work. They were taken at an Indian powwow in Dagsboro, Delaware. Once a year towards in the summertime, all the different native Indian tribes in the area get together and they have a powwow. And I went with my camera and I captured close-up images, and these two, starting with the top one, I did of hands. And I found it very interesting to focus in on the hands and the things that they brought with them to the powwow. And this woman had a fox purse, and she had a lot of jewelry on. A lot of them there had a lot of jewelry on. And I really liked the way the light hit her and the fringe on her dress, and then the light hit her arms, and you can see her veins and her jewelry and the fox. Moving down, I have a gentleman who has a lot of jewelry on as well, focusing in on his hands, focusing on capturing the light. And you can see the shadow in here in the canopy of trees that was taking place in the woods. And then you can see the light reflecting off of all of his jewelry and all of his garb for the powwow. I shot a lot of pictures at this event, but these were two of my favorite. And so I've chose to display them here on the wall. They're both shot in film with the Hasselblad I just showed you, and they were both hand printed by myself. So these next two photographs that I'm going to talk about are part of a series I did of portraits of people. Specifically people that I didn't know very well. They were either acquaintances or people that I walked up to on the street and asked to photograph. The first image is of a gentleman in Ocean City, New Jersey. And he's sitting on the boardwalk feeding the birds, and he had his sailor hat on. And his expression was very nice. That's what caught me and started talking to him in the first place. And I sat with him for a while, and again, everything is about timing. So I waited, I saw these people coming up the boardwalk towards us, and I framed them right in the shot. I also waited for the clouds to part, and so his face would be lit up and you could see the texture on his shirt and his hat. And then again, this is on film and I printed it in the darkroom myself. Moving on, this was an acquaintance, so I got to go into her home, and she's posing with her dog, and she's posing, laying down on her bed. So I asked people, when I had the opportunity to go into their home and photograph them, I asked them how they would like their portrait taken. And so this is what she chose to do. And I thought that these two images worked very well together. And I chose to hang them here on the wall. This next image is from a series I did where I painted with light. Painting with light is when you take a flashlight, and it needs to be completely dark in your space where you're photographing, and you light up what you want to be shown in the image. This was at nighttime in this person's barn. He's posing with his horse, who got spooked by the flashlight. So I ended up getting two images of the horse in the frame, and I lit up only what I wanted here. And this is from a whole series I did like this, and this is one of the more successful images from that series. This next image is another painting with light photograph that I took, where I experimented with changing the colors of light that I was working with. So here's this couple, she's a chef, and so she's got her meat cleaver out, and they're posing together. And the other really important thing about painting with light is that your subjects have to remain very still. So they're standing here frozen, and I'm moving around the frame, and I'm using a white light on them, and then I move over into the garage with a pink light, and I lit up, they have a boat and a hose and gardening tools and all of that I lit up in the frame. The other important thing about painting with light as a photographer is that you need to dress in complete black. You don't want to show up in the frame at all. So this photo was taken over 30 seconds of time at night, and I'm in the frame almost the entire time, but you can't see me.
Thank you for sharing your camera collection with us. Good. Let's take a look now at the next photograph, which is walking away in black and white. My eye is drawn immediately to her dress. Tell us about that photo.
Well, it's right after the ceremony, and they were walking away from everyone just to have a little personal moment for a few minutes. And it just looked like they were starting off on a new path. And I thought the dress really popped. It worked in black and white much better to convey that moment.
And the black and white, I see the texture also of the greenery on both sides. You know, it's black and white, but I can feel the texture. It's really good. Tell me about this next one, the kiss. His shoes are something else. What's going on here?
Well, I didn't want to do a traditional portrait. I wanted to have some fun with it. I wanted to include the whole wedding party without having them lined up. So for this one, I just had the wedding party go in the back and do their own thing. They're walking around, hanging out. And I snapped a few shots of the bride and the groom up in the front. And this moment happened, and I thought it was really nice.
Under the tree, a black and white, a very silent moment, I think, because of the lighting. What's happening with the lighting, and how do you choose that sometimes?
Well, in this case, it was an outdoor wedding and outdoor pictures, and it was a very hot day, and the bride was melting. And we saw this willow, it was like a willow type tree with like a canopy. And for some relief from the sun, I said, well, let's go see what it's like under there. So we went under there and we took some pictures, and it ended up working out great because you have the branches which create these lines that draw you in, and they were just able to fit right in there, and I got a few shots. So this one was the one that worked out the best.
Yeah, good. So much of what happens with weddings is then later everybody's picking out the frames. It's an important part of celebrating the wedding. But you framed in the camera on this next one called Lattice.
Yeah.
How did you come across this?
Well, this was a Midsummer's Night Dream wedding, and it was outside, and this was during the cocktail hour, and the bride was, you know, going around talking to guests, having a good time, and there were these big lattice pieces all outside, and I saw her walk behind with one of the bridesmaids to go adjust a dress or something, and I thought, they're going to walk right in that frame, and so I stood there, and it takes a lot of patience to be a wedding photographer. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I saw them frame themselves right in the lattice frame. Yeah. And so I framed a picture inside of a picture, in a sense.
Good. Again, this actually is the couple from the two previous shots. Again, light coming through slats, a wonderful use of light. How did you get this?
Well, I always like to scope out where I'm going to be shooting prior to the wedding, if I can. And this was in an arboretum, and so I went and checked it out ahead of time, and this was a bridge that went across a creek. And I thought, well, you know, the sun on that time of day is probably going to be going through the slats on that bridge in a certain way, and it's going to look really nice. So I knew I was going to want to get a shot of them in there and use the light to my advantage.
The next, our two last images are of the reception, which I think is a whole different mood change. I think your photos really capture the happiness. This next photo, it's called Cocktail Hour. Is this a bridesmaid or is this just a guest?
It's just a guest. It was before the bridal party arrived, and everyone's, you know, having drinks. They're in this holding area before they go into the reception hall. And again, I'm using the light to my advantage, and I'm walking around and I'm snapping pictures of all of the guests because I want to document who was there. But the light really hit her nicely, and I really like the way that she was posed, her stance. She just looks very regal in this picture, and I usually don't end up using cocktail hour pictures in my portfolio, but this image just seemed very striking to me.
As a photographer, a serious photographer who photographs wedding, I just wanted to step back and ask a question. Do you actually interact with the people?
I do. You know, as a wedding photographer, you're not just a photographer. You're there, you're emotional support for the bride. You know, during her wedding day, you need to keep a little toolkit in your bag. Like I keep a little sewing kit, some Band-Aids, some tissues. You don't know what's going to happen. So I do interact, and you're really their friend and one of their close, you know, a close person to them for the day. And I interact with the guests too. It brings out more emotion, and it brings out more real emotion when you interact.
That's good. Speaking of real emotion, I have to say that this next photo is called Photo Booth, and it's the last photo that we have, last image from you today. And I mean, Frank, this is everybody's Uncle Larry, isn't it? I mean, it's wonderful. I really feel like we're in the moment. What's happening?
Well, this is one of the last shots I took of the night. The party was wrapping up, and he's sitting in the photo booth with his drink and his hat on, and he's snapping away. And I wanted to use the light again to my advantage. I had a flash on my camera. I could have used my flash, but I was waiting for the flash from the photo booth to go off so it would light him up at that very angle. That's the angle I wanted the light to hit him. So it just captures a really fun moment at the end of the night, and I thought it was a good closing image.
Yeah, and well, we're going to close out with that. And for more information about Erika Nizborski's work, please contact her using the information that's on your screen. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Good. Join us again next time, Behind the Lens.